Okay, you probably noticed the house up here with a rather strange date over the door, right? For those of you who don't know it, that's a Jewish graveyard. It's the oldest Jewish graveyard in Ireland. Now, its connection with the 1916 Rising, or alleged connection, and I was really only told this a couple of months ago, is one of the great enigmas of the 1916 Rising is the unknown Wobbly. Right, now, a Wobbly was a member of an American trade union called the International Workers of the World. They operated on an international basis, and James Connolly was one of the senior members of the Wobblies. There's two names keep cropping up, right? One is a man called Arthur Wicks, and another name is Abraham Neal. Now, the two get confused, and their names get co-joined, but it's fairly certain now that they were two different people. Arthur Wicks was from Norwich in England. His family were in the shoe business. He trained as a hotel waiter, got involved in a strike, lost his job, was blacklisted, came to Ireland, got involved with activities here. He got killed in the 1916 Rising, and is generally, recent research suggests he was probably buried in a mass grave in Glasnevin. However, Abraham Neal, who's believed to have fought out here at the Battle of Annesley Bridge, was Jewish. Now, the story goes that after Neal died, that because he was Jewish, none of the graveyards in Dublin would bury him. That, strictly speaking, isn't true. It's more to do with, under the Jewish right of observation, somebody has to pray over you for 5 days. Now, the house there is the caretaker's house. So, technically, there could have been somebody available to pray over Abraham Neal. But the story is, Neal was buried secretly in the graveyard over there. And again, there was a grave available. The last official burial took place in 1908, but there was a space available. The woman who owned the grave there died in 1916. They couldn't get her across town, so she was buried in Bluebell. Now, it's a great story, you know, and it continues on even better because allegedly, according to the same story, this is a story that was preserved in Dublin Labour and Communist circles, that about 20, 30 years later, a relative of somebody who had a spare grave going in the graveyard over here died abroad and decided they would like to come back to be buried. And when they went to dig the grave, they found a man in a Citizen Army uniform wearing a Wobbly badge. And that is all the makings of a great Dublin story, except there are two cases, one in the 1930s and one in the 1940s, where relatives of people who had graves in this graveyard applied to have people brought back to Ireland and buried in this graveyard, and at the last minute permission was refused and they were buried elsewhere. So it could be true. So you might just like to have a little thought for the unknown Wobbly, because we may have passed the last resting place of the Wobbly, known as Abraham Neal, which almost certainly wasn't his real name. Okay. The other reason we're down here is because over here, and now we're getting down to the serious stuff. This building over here has been completely rebuilt, but this was Gilby's wine shop in 1916. There was a house over it. It gave a commanding position up onto the Fairview Road. It also gave good coverage towards Ballybock Bridge here, right? And so it was decided to take this over as the main headquarters. The other thing it had going for it was it had a telephone line. And this is something I only found out recently, which is quite interesting. A lot of the communication was done by hand, and people on bicycles and running backwards and forwards. But there was a member of B Company of the volunteers who decided he'd be better served going to work than actually taking part in the Rising, because he was a telephone operator. And he basically intercepted all the reports coming through of British troop movements, and he relayed them on to the GPO. And when he found out about Annesley Bridge, he rang up Gilby's wine shop over here. And he was the one who relayed the message that the troops were coming down from the musketry school and an attack was launched from the buildings over here. They also occupied this building here, Mars. Now, a few people have been asking about Sean Russell's statue up in Fairview Park. Sean Russell was in command over here. The Henderson brothers and Oscar Traynor were in command over here at Gilby's wine shop. Not a lot really happened down here. It was where men were billeted and where instructions were given out. But on the Tuesday morning, there was a very loud bang on the door over here, and Sean Russell told the barman to see what it was, and he says, "It's all right, it's just one of our regulars." And he says, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, he can't go to work, he doesn't get his pint." And that was the most action that was seen around this area here. But there was, we were talking about it a little bit up at Annesley Bridge Road, right? But for a lot of the volunteers who left witness statements behind of activity in this area, one of the things that they talked about was when hostilities broke out on the Monday, the amount of people they saw coming across Ballybock Bridge who had enough forethought to hit the shops and start buying bread and tinned food and non-perishables, basically, and the guys thought this could be a long one. But anyhow, we were going to continue on down the road here to go into Richmond Avenue, but we're running behind schedule and a few people are getting tired. So we're going to cut that. But as I said, it's just down here, first turn on the right, if you want to go down in your own time, right? And at the very top of the road was Tom Clark's house. And a lot of the planning for the Rising took part in that house. And now we're just going to go up here, over the bridge, down by Ballybock House, which was the manure works, which was occupied by the Citizen Army. We're going to cross over to the fire station there, and that'll be our last stop before we hit the Annesley House. All right? So if you want to just follow us.